This video has been a long time in the making, but we are finally ready to read the obituary on the JAKL, or at least the JAKL 1.0, because there's one thing that me and Palmetto State Armory agree on, and that is that the original JAKL is such a defiant piece of crap that they had to upgrade every single component along the way until they replaced it with the Gen 2. Who do you think you are, Sig? Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the story of the killing JAKL, but a quick little refresher is that back in the day, PSA sent this out to me for review, for free, back when I did affiliate stuff, and, well, every single slot of Picatinny on this upper receiver, which I shouldn't even call it Picatinny, is out of spec. Every single one on a $1,200 rifle. A quick comparison to a $30 Anderson upper receiver shows that it is in spec. Rest in peace, Anderson, by the way. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you can't mount anything to the JAKL, as you guys have seen it over the year that I've had it with several different optics. However, it does mean that you can't fit everything on it, like this Geisley mount. Doesn't fit, too bad. I would like to mount that on there. My Primary Arms SLX and PLX mounts, too bad. They won't fit on there. Anything that has a really tight surface, too bad. It doesn't fit on there. Basically, any mount that's really high quality with really tight tolerances isn't going to fit on the JAKL, which is actually a good thing, so you shoot it less so it has less of a chance of blowing up on you. After I made that video, they of course canceled my account, as one does, but then also when I tried to purchase stuff from just their website, not even PSA products, but just stuff they had on their website, they decided to hold my money for months and never ship anything until I took them to a chargeback. So thank you, PSA, this one's for you. Now, to start off on a bit of a positive note, I do want to say that the pin and weld job, because this is a 14.5 with a pin and weld reared in plan B, the pin and weld is fantastic. Looks great, much better than mine could ever be. We're just going to work our way around and down like a turd circling the bowl. Starting off with the barrel, this is a 14.5 pin and weld barrel, 1 in 7 twist, 5.56 chambering, black nitride, and it is acceptable. It seems like a standard PSA barrel with a very special trunnion / barrel extension, which we will certainly get to. Unfortunately, attached to the barrel is your gas block, regulator, and gas tube, and it has a gas tube the same way an AK has a gas tube. It's not really needed, but it is there. The regulator itself is a 8-position adjustable system, which is nice for most things, so there's a few caveats in there that we're certainly going to get to, and if you leave it alone for a long enough period of time with enough shooting, it will completely lock up on you, which is a nice touch. Now, on top of that, the detent for your adjustment to keep it in place has a semi-exposed spring, which has a chance to detonate and leave you with a wandering gas adjustment knob like a reliability Russian roulette. They realized that you wanted an adjustable gas block, they gave you an adjustable gas block, just not in the way you wanted it. Keep in mind that every part that we've touched thus far has changed since the early days of the JAKL Gen 1, meaning that the handguard, the upper receiver extension, the gas block, the regulator have all changed since the early serial number JAKL. So your JAKL is not the same as my JAKL, and mine is not the same as yours, even though they're both JAKLs. Moving back to the long stroke piston system, which again has also changed. The new ones, and yes, a second JAKL upper has hit the focus trip channel. The design and geometry of the long stroke piston is completely different, and I wonder why. Now, at no less than 2 points has the JAKL completely stopped itself from working, because on the piston you have this nice little roll pin, and that roll pin has a tendency to walk itself out, gouge up your upper receiver, and cause enough friction until it just locks up the entire system. You take it apart to wonder why it's no longer working suppressed on the most open gas setting available, and you see a little roll pin that just looks like it's happy to see you. And on the newer variation, everything is completely different. These are, of course, non-reciprocating side chargers, and they actually do use a pretty novel little leaf spring in the upper receiver to keep that charging handle, sled, tray, whatever you want to call it, in place, although that can cause it to block up at times if it's installed incorrectly, which fortunately mine was not. Mine has other issues, not that one. Now, in the back of the JAKL, there's no less than 13 screws holding this thing together, and if that isn't foreshadowing of the unlucky run this thing has had, well then, I don't know what is. Now, all 13 of the screws on this JAKL are in various levels of flushness with the receiver itself, though I would hope that they're within tolerance. I'm sure it's fine. The 4 screws, however, that are not fine are the ones that hold your barrel in place through a very novel design called a screw build. Now, these 4 screws, 2 on either side, have what I would like to call a DAC problem, that is, design, assembly, and QC. You see, these 4 screws hold both your barrel and your handguard in place, and that's quite literally it. Now, if at any point those happen to come loose, as they have in many reviews from people who actually shoot them, that means your barrel starts to flop around a little bit, which is a little unconducive to accuracy or performance in general, though if you're buying a JAKL, you're probably not too worried about that in the first place.
I'm going to have a conversation with the Palmetto State Armory engineers with a hand.
On my JAKL, all 4 of the most important screws shipped finger tight with no thread locker or rock set or anything of the sort. By contrast, the front handguard retaining screws, these 2 little guys, were torqued to oblivion and thread locked with a permanent thread locker that I had to use a heat gun to get them off. So if they had actually done that on the important ones, that would have probably been cool. But even if they had, it still has a design problem. The only thing holding your barrel to the extruded piece of aluminum are 4 tiny screws. On most ARs, you're going to have something like this. This is a barrel nut torqued down to around 40 foot-pounds. On the JAKL, you have 4 tiny screws torqued down to 40 inch-pounds, and maybe they have some sort of thread locker on them, but probably not. The design is bad, the assembly is bad, the quality control is bad. You, good friend, have a DAC problem. Now, one little quirk of the system that leads me to believe, now this is just a game theory, that the designers knew that this was semi-retarded, and they decided to make the front takedown hole part of the barrel. So that means that while it's attached to your lower receiver, the barrel can't just fly off, because it's held in place by the lower receiver, which is a very novel design. The first time I've ever seen that. Very unique, great design. The only thing keeping your JAKL barrel from becoming a projectile is the lower receiver itself. Now, before we get to the performance review, the reliability and the accuracy of my JAKL that I have here, and I'm sure if you guys are noticers, you have noticed a pattern emerging, but before we get to that, we have a totally different JAKL that I should mention, and it has its own interesting, unique story, which I will read out for you now. This is one of PSA's Shorty 300 blackout up receivers that was purchased shortly after they came out by a kind viewer of the channel. Well, actually not this one, because this one's been replaced 3 separate times. On the first attempt, PSA sent this fine gentleman a JAKL with the handguard screws completely stripped out, which is not great considering those also hold in your barrel. Well, he simply sent it back to them and they replaced it. The second model, the interior was not finished being machined, so that the bolt carrier group would simply not move forward or backwards and would get stuck in place. And then on the third attempt, he said, you know what, screw this, I'm gonna send it to John, and we have this model here that has one of the handguard screws stripped out from the factory, so that's nice. I can see red Loctite spilling out from the barrel nut screws, or just the barrel screws in general, because there is no barrel nut. So I suppose that's nice. It's sort of the opposite problem that I had with my JAKL, which just goes to show you their QC innovations, if you could call it that. I have shot this a little bit. I may do a long-term review on it. Not exactly sure. JAKLs aren't particularly fun to shoot. 300 blackout is kind of expensive to shoot, and wasting it on something like this that is essentially a garbage rod, not sure if that's worth it for me personally. Now, something else very interesting about this newer 300 blackout JAKL is you might be able to tell is that they went ahead and redid the entire geometry of the rail. I wonder why they did that on the newer JAKLs. You're welcome. So this JAKL is a piece of crap, and it's a piece of crap in a completely different way than my PSA JAKL, and that's the wonderful thing about them, is you never know what you're gonna get inside of a PSA box. Now, if we get to the performance aspect, we take all of that bad stuff that I've been throwing at you guys, we go ahead and just push all that to the side, we just throw those little negative things out of our positive PSA brain, and we just say, okay, but how does it actually shoot? What are the performance benefits of the system? Are there any performance benefits of the system? No, not really, guys. It's novel. People who buy this, the main defense that I hear, and really the only defense that I will personally accept, is it looks cool. That's why I bought it. They're not particularly cheap. The full rifles are $1,300 all the way up to $1,800. They completely agree with me. The Gen 1 had so many issues that they scrapped the whole thing to move on to something else to sell you. Congratulations, you early adopters. You got scammed again. Now, before we get to shooting performance, we do have to mention another controversial feature of the JAKL, and that is that naked it weighs more than 8 pounds, which is 1.5 pounds heavier than an AR. Now, I don't want to be a stickler for weight just for weight's sake. I don't think that should be the main reason you're buying one platform versus another. However, if you are sacrificing 1.5 pounds on your rifle, you have to get something for that performance, right? So if you have an 8-pound rifle, but it's extremely accurate or it's extremely reliable, or name the feature of it that you like the most, well, in your mind, that might be a worthy trade-off for that weight. However, I present to you the opposite of that. What if it was just a straight nerf with no performance upside whatsoever? Starting out with shootability on the 8-pound JAKL. It is a long stroke piston system and has about 30% more reciprocating mass than a standard AR, with a far inferior recoil mitigation system, that being a singular spring with no buffer. So it shoots worse than an AR, even though it is tunable. It shoots okay. Like, it's still 5.56 at the end of the day. It shoots okay, but worse than an AR.
Oh my gosh. The rifle does jump around quite a bit more than I would like.
And when we talk about suppressed shooting, which I have shot this suppressed quite a bit, and again, at times when the upper receiver was in various levels of internal gouging, running it suppressed would be the only way that it would actually run with more back pressure. So I have shot it suppressed quite a bit, and unfortunately it shoots like any other suppressed rifle with an adjustable gas block, because again, this has an adjustable gas block. It shoots pretty good suppressed. Most ARs, when you have an adjustable gas block, also shoot pretty good suppressed.
How am I getting gas? How am I getting gas without a suppressor on this thing?
You're still getting all that back pressure down the bore itself, whether it's DI or whether it's long stroke piston. So depending on your suppressor, you can still get toxic fumes back to your face and make it an unpleasant shooting experience. So the JAKL might be better than a couple other suppressed rifles out there, but if we're doing the same thing with an adjustable gas block versus long stroke piston, they're going to be pretty darn close, and the JAKL's just going to shoot worse the entire time while also being 1.5 pounds heavier. But now let's talk about accuracy. Now, people will say, well, DI is more accurate than short stroke, which is more accurate than long stroke. All that's kind of nonsense. It depends about the individual system itself, the quality of the barrel. That's going to be the biggest dictator of accuracy. Now, one very novel design that I have to give to PSA is that they decided to make a double free float barrel. Not only is it not touching the handguard, but at times there's nothing touching it whatsoever. But when the accuracy randomizer is turned off, aka actually bolted in place, the accuracy is the same as any other AR out there on the market, which is fine. It's between 1.5 with good ammo up to 2.5 with ball ammo, again, when it's actually installed in the upper receiver, so it's fine. So let's rewind a little bit. You've given Palmetto State Armory $1,300. They've given you a rifle with an extra 1.5 pounds. The accuracy is the same, the performance is worse, and the reliability, QC, and assembly are like on-off switches, but you only get to pick 2 at best. So for those of you waiting with bated breath to see whether or not I recommend the JAKL or not, well, just keep holding it. I'll be there in just a minute. Do I recommend you get a JAKL 2.0 and beta test for that model? No, I don't believe so. But with all that out of the way, gentlemen, let me know what your favorite randomizer feature is on the Palmetto State Armory JAKL, and if you are a hardcore defender, please leave your best argumentation in the comments down below, where I will be sure to take it seriously. But with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. God bless.